What is the state of Indian MMA in your opinion? It's a blank slate. You can answer this question however you want to. But you would say that's what happened in the Anshul. So that's kind of the first thing I wanted to ask. Like, how would you want Indian MMA fans or even Pakistani MMA fans to look at the Anshul Jubli fight?
Regarding running his mouth, I don't think that's running his mouth. I think he's confident in himself, which is good. As a fighter, if you don't back yourself up, how do you expect a country to back yourself up? It's impossible.
That event had two Pakistan India fights, right? We had Bharat Khandari, who was coming off of a 7-year layoff, if I'm not wrong. In the main event, we had Captain Crazy, Shikan Sekhar, taking on Rizwan Ali, who's also one of the better Pakistani MMA prospects that we've produced. Five fights, five Pakistan India fights, complete wash from Mohammad Farhad to Shikan Sekhar to Seth Rosario. Everyone gets completely washed. It's 5-0, clean sweep.
I know, I'm going to sound like a true Indian when I say, oh, it's horrible matchmaking and, it should be done. I would not completely blame the matchmaking. Listen, my point is, even if you don't believe yourself 1%, that fight is almost lost, which is what happens when most of our boys fight foreigners, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the number one mixed martial arts show in Pakistan. Welcome back to the weigh in. We are expanding our borders, ladies and gentlemen. We want to cover Pakistani mixed martial arts, and we always will. The stories of Pakistani mixed martial arts fighters is how we started, and that's how we will keep going. But I want the way in, and I want this show to be more than just Pakistani MMA. I want to talk about Indian MMA because it's so interesting to me. It's so fascinating to me. There's so many things happening. And as you all know, there's so many Pakistan India fights now happening almost every other month at this point, it seems. So I wanted to get the Indian perspective. I wanted to call on one of the people that I've met across my journey in mixed martial arts from across the border in India. And honestly, one of the chillest, most realist guys that I've met or haven't exactly physically met yet, but I've had the pleasure of knowing and following for a couple of years. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is the founder and head coach of Team Relentless in Mumbai. He is also the president of the Federation of Mixed Martial Arts in India, which is the official Gamma affiliate for all amateur MMA in India. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, the incredible, the physically fit, and the person who just won a tournament in Bangkok right now, Mr. Jitendra Khare. Thank you so much, Jitendra. How are you doing? Tell me about Bangkok. You just got off the
Good.
flight, like I think this morning. How was that?
Yeah, I had the privilege of, becoming the IBA representative for India. That happened in January. And after a week of that happening, I was told, okay, February, they are doing an Asian championship. So it was a little too late to put together a team. So I was like, yeah, I thought, why not just me go and compete? It's been 2 years since I last competed. So yeah, stepped on the mat, gave a good 6 weeks of training. And like you said, not at the physically best shape, but yeah, tried to be in 6 weeks. Like I said in my post, thanks to my son, I got back into the gym lifting weights with him. He's 14, so getting him to lift weights. So with him, I got back into lifting, and then I thought, yeah, let's do this. Had a great experience. It's not easy doing this at 47, but thank God for Masters Division.
Man,
Though
no,
I
I
would
could
still
imagine.
say it was 40 plus and tough, but it's still better than going against 22 and 24-year olds. So it was good fun. You know, like always, a great learning. Uh, Always learning and always growing. I keep saying this to my students. I want to keep doing this till I physically can. And the day I cannot do it myself, I think I'll stop coaching, because if I can't do it, I don't have the right to ask them to do it.
I
So
love that. I love that. And I think that's how it should be. And you're right, man. I'm 28. And when I step on the mats, if I ever step on the mats with a 20-year-old kid who's just absolutely beating my ass, it's very humbling. It really brings me down back to earth. And that's what MMA is about, right? And that's what martial arts is all is about. It's about being able to do something. And there's no real age limit to this. So power to you, sir. And again, I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking out the time. I actually want to ask you and want to get straight into it right into the first question. I want to ask you about the state of Indian MMA and what you think the state of Indian MMA is. But before we get to that, Jitendra, I would like to really quickly thank and shout out the beautiful sponsors of All the Mic. I want to shout out Maidan, the application which you can download now for all of your footballing needs. Maidan app is a brilliant app which allows you to get connected with people in your area, use the app and get a pickup football game immediately, just like this. Sometimes I know personally I play football twice a week. It gets hard. You can't collect 20 people at a time to go play a game and then get it done. Instead, just download the Maidan app. There are matches happening near you. Join in with them and get a host of cool features on the app as well, such as leaderboards, so on and so forth. Be able to customize your game. And if nothing else, just join the Maidan app ecosystem and be a part of this, because futsal is something which we all need, regardless of age, regardless, like Jitendra was saying, regardless of age, is something you should always be able to do in your life. So go check out the Maidan app. And more than anything else, I just want to thank Maidan so much for being the beautiful sponsors of On the Mic, helping us sustain ourselves, helping us keep the literal lights on at this place. So we really appreciate you, Maidan, for sponsoring On the Mic. So guys, please check out the Maidan app. Link is in bio. Check them out on Instagram. They post a bunch of cool shit. They're more than just an app. The app in itself should sell you. If nothing else, they're actually boosting the Pakistani football ecosystem. And as we all know, Pakistani sports, a lot like Indian sports, not named cricket, need that boost. So check out Maidan, and thank you, Maidan, for sponsoring this video. Now that that's out of the way, Jitendra, I really wanted to ask you first and foremost, what is the state of Indian MMA in your opinion? It's a blank slate. You can answer this question however you want to. I would want to focus on the professional level, because when we get into amateur with Gamma and IMAF, that segregation gets a bit murky. And, that's fine. That's a funneling system that's consistent. Maybe save it for another day, another podcast. But specifically with professional MMA, what is the state of Indian MMA right now, in your opinion, with recent results, with mainstream results, with anything else as well? How would you describe it?
So personally, then this is what I feel. We are at the best place that we could be. I always look at it from a very positive perspective. Yes, we've had a few big losses, but listen, when I started way back in 2010, when the so-called pioneers and all were non-existent at that time, even having somebody fight at the level that they are right now was a dream. The fact that we are getting there, I think, is a great start, right? I think, this is all, I feel this is all the foundation for something really big that is going to happen. And we have to take our wins with our losses. It's not that, this is the end of Indian MMA or death of Indian MMA. This is just the start. Yes, we are, you know, I think it's a good wake up call, but that, there's more hard work that needs to be done if we have to compete at international stage and if we have to compete in the big leagues. And I don't see anything specifically negative coming out of any of this. Yeah, like I said, we all want our boys to win and do well, and but I think it's a process. It's going to take time. If we are going to pit our guys against fighters who are from countries who've been doing this longer or have better resources, better fundings and stuff like that, we have to give ourselves time. I think, we can't get disappointed on these results. I think we need to, take this and learn from it and keep moving on, because I think there's a organic growth, obviously. The only way to get around it is obviously, if you can get somebody who'll pump in millions of dollars and get you foreign coaches and have all the kind of technology available, like be it for recovery, be it for all that available at your disposal. That's the only other way you can expedite the whole procedure of growth of the MMA in the whole country. I'm not just talking about one fighter or one team. I'm talking about the whole country. But I know that, in countries like India, Pakistan, and most of the Asian country, that's not the case. So it's going to take an organic growth. It's going to take time. It's going to have its own journey. I think that, again, when you look at it, you spoke about cricket. So even if you go back to cricket, the problem is that the audience and the fans in the subcontinent are very fickle minded. One win and today you're God. And tomorrow itself you could lose and people will be like, oh, I told you this guy's all shit and this team's not good. So I think you just have to take it as it comes. But honestly, I think that, we are very well placed. We are now, obviously, we've got two people in the UFC, we've got people who fought PFL, Bellator. It's all good. It's all good. I mean, 10 years down the line, this was the dream, right? We are there. And I think we just need to stay on it. I think every country, if you look at it, has been through this journey or is going through it. Like, when we go over to Indonesia, for that matter, Thailand, Malaysia, they are experiencing the same growth. They're going to have wins, they're going to have losses, and it's going to keep growing. The audience is getting more knowledgeable.
And on that note, Jitendra, I wanted to kind of cut this up into different segments that we can discuss. So we'll get to Pakistan versus India matchups in a bit because I feel like there's a deeper story there. Because again, you're talking about maybe matching up with countries that have more resources, that maybe have had more investment. Pakistan is definitely not one of those examples because God knows how Pakistan, only God knows how Pakistani MMA is still alive, in my opinion. Because considering the infrastructure lack thereof, it's insane how we still have fighters coming in. It's just sheer will and determination, if you ask me. But that's one thing. But before that, I want to take us. I think the answer you just gave me is more contextualized to the Anshul Jubli situation, right? So, uh, Anshul Jubli, of course, just very famously got knocked out opening seconds of the round, etc., etc. That's just the game. And when I was looking at it as well, that's what I was thinking as well. This can happen. I think the reason it's so blown out of proportion and people are trolling it so much is because it was the first Indian fighter, and Anshul did run his mouth a bit, which is again the game itself. But you would say that's what happened in the Anshul. So that's kind of the first thing I wanted to ask. Like, how would you want Indian MMA fans or even Pakistani MMA fans to look at the Anshul Jubli fight? Before you answered, this is exactly what I've been saying to people for years, that we can pray and dream, oh, we want a Pakistani guy in the UFC. We want a Pakistani guy in the UFC. Brother, it does not get easier once you get to the UFC. It only gets harder. You're only going to get more disappointed when you get to the UFC. So, how would you talk about or think about the Anshul Jubli situation, so to speak, if I call it that?
So, see, my whole point is, I mean, give credit where it's due. Like Anshul's carrying the weight of a nation on his shoulders. That's never going to be easy. That's never going to be easy. You look at his first fight, look at the first two rounds, and the brilliant performance he put up. You can't forget that. And that also was against an American guy fighting on home soil and stuff like that. I think that we cannot forget just because of his one loss, right? And I think, it the pressure of carrying it's just exactly what happens, right? One loss and people get that disappointed in you and you become something of a meme and stuff like that. Listen, uh, and regarding running his mouth, I don't think that's running his mouth. I think he's confident in himself, which is good. As a fighter, if you don't back yourself up, how do you expect a country to back yourself up? Right? It's impossible. I mean, if as a fighter, I believe that if I wake up in the morning and I don't believe I'm the best at what I do, I shouldn't be doing this. Right? That belief system has to be there. Yes, obviously he's vocal about it, which I don't think is wrong. And he's doing what any other fighter does. He's voicing his opinion. And I think somewhere he's re-emphasizing it for himself that he's one of the best at what he does. So I mean, if he would have won, would we have not said the same thing about him? Right? So when he loses, that becomes a joke. I think that's very hard. I think, it's exactly like you said. Getting to the UFC is the first step and the easiest step. It only gets worse from there on. Now you're at a position where you're only fighting the best in the world. And that cannot be an easy position to be in. That really cannot be an easy. I mean, there is no easy fight there. I don't think there is any easy fights for him going forward.
Yeah.
So I
And I mean,
think
sorry. Yeah. And I was just going to say, I know a lot of Pakistani fighters who've been talking about, I want to get to the UFC. I want to get to the UFC. And locally, when I'm matchmaking and I'm trying to give them like, a Pakistani fighter of equal caliber, they'll say, brother, I don't know, that's a risky 50-50 fight. It's like, bro, if you can't fight a guy here, and what the hell are you going to do when they pair you up with Song Yadong and he's going to knock you on your ass? Like, that's just the level just increases exponentially, right? And I think that's what's happening with Anshul in a way as well. But also, he got a flash knockout. That's just the game. Early stoppage or not, that's just the game. That is why we love MMA. Anything can happen at any second, at any time, at any given moment with anyone. That's just what happens in the game, right?
I mean, think
But
about it. Pooja
mm,
won her first fight training with the same team Anshul is training. So how does that, make his team any less good or bad? Or how does that make the training environment any less good or bad? I mean, it's just what happened. I mean, change the situation. Maybe, you know, if it was a grappling exchange or anything else, we don't know how the fight would have gone. Yeah, it played out the way it did. And, that's what MMA is, right? There are always ifs and buts and should have beens and could have beens, but it is what it is. And that's what I keep telling people, when they ask me, oh, what's your opinion on the fight? And was that a quick stoppage or was that what was your decision? And I keep saying that the only people that matter at that point was the referee in the cage and he took his call. What I say does not matter. And when it goes to a judge's decision, there are only three people in the world whose decision matters. You and I can keep debating it all our life, and it's not going to make a difference. They made the decision, it's over. We can form an expert opinion and break it down second by second. And looks good for social media, looks good to make you sound educated, but it's over, it's done. Pathology
Exactly.
doesn't care about your and my opinion. It cares about whose hand was raised.
Exactly. And
I
that's
think,
what we got.
and I think it's fair. And I mean, listen, uh, I think it's going to happen, and we just need to take it with the wins and losses need to be taken together. I'm sure like Angad had such a close fight in road 2 years, right? Right? He lost, but we can still argue and say that no, it was a close fight. He should have won. So it's I wouldn't say that we can say that, oh, his level's not good or this and that based on one or two fights. That's really not the case. I think we are just being too harsh, like we always do with any sportsman.
We're a very, and I would say we, because we are the same people
Yeah,
divided by a
yeah.
border. Ultimately, we are very like critical group, country of people, so to speak. But switching gears, so that's the Anshul situation, and that's kind of the answer that I think any reasonable person would give. That this isn't like the end of the world. And as a Pakistani, I will tell you as well, this does not prove anything about like whether Anshul deserves to be there. He won a whole tournament to get there. He is one of the best in the world. He
Um,
wouldn't be in the UFC if
there's
he
not
wasn't.
even an argument whether he deserves to be
Yeah.
there. Hell yeah, he deserves to be there.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
got a contract that shows he deserves to be there.
And the
But
UFC doesn't just sign anybody. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? It's very rare that they accidentally sign someone they
yeah.
weren't meant to.
I mean,
They have a
we've
very
had
strict
other
process.
Indians who fought road to see if they were that good. They would have got the contract as well, right? But we had one Anshul who got the contract. So I think we should just give him credit where it's due.
100%. And switching gears now, actually, I want to jump onto the Pakistan versus India situation. And I've been baffled by this, right? And I have a theory. I'm gonna state the theory to you, and I want to know how right or wrong you think this theory is, right? So here's the chronology of events that I've been seeing for the last couple of professional events, right? We first had Karate Combat 45, where we had 2-1, so to speak, 2 wins for Pakistan, 1 win for India. The headlining fight, of course, in that card was Shah Rind, in my opinion, perhaps the best talent ever produced by Pakistani MMA or combat sports as a whole. That guy is absolutely phenomenal, taking on Rana Rudra Pratap Singh, who, in my opinion, is not on his level, right? Then you go to Brave CF 82, I believe it was the one that was hosting. I was on announcements. I should actually remember which number it was, but I don't. That's a separate story. But that event had two Pakistan India fights, right? We had Bharat Khandari, who was coming off of a 7-year layoff, if I'm not wrong. And then we had, in the main event, we had Captain Crazy, Shrikant Sekhar taking on Rizwan Ali, who's also one of the better Pakistani MMA prospects that we've produced. Fast forward to Brave CF in Bahrain. 5 fights, 5 Pakistan India fights, complete wash from Mohammad Farhad to Shrikant Shekhar to Seth Rosario. Everyone gets completely washed. It's 5-0, clean sweep. And everyone just keeps telling me, bro, look at how ahead we are of Indian MMA. Look at how much better we are than Indian MMA. And as a Pakistani MMA fan, I would say, yeah, dude, these results, you can't really argue. But my theory is that this is just horrible matchmaking. My theory is that these guys, a lot of them, they're coming out from the Indian professional circuit. This is not even close to the cream of the crop that should actually be fighting these guys, which are our cream of the crop, right? So my question is this true? And if it is, who the fuck is to blame? Because this can't happen, right?
So I know, I'm going to sound like a true Indian when I say, oh, it's horrible matchmaking and it should be done. I would not completely blame the matchmaking. Listen, my point is, this is what I keep saying. All matches are good as long as you look at their records. When you dig deep into records, you have guys who have 13-1 record, but that one loss is the only loss they've ever had to anybody they fought who was worth fighting. When you see the other 13, nine, you'll find 9 opponents who were 0-0 when they fought there. And a couple of them who were more losses than wins. And now I have a 13 and 1 record. I go and meet somebody who's really talented and he, you know, whoops my ass. Yeah. Surprising? No, not really. Then you have guys coming off long layoffs. I think, see, as a fighter also, I think obviously I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for saying this. That, oh, your team's also lost, blah, blah. But my point is reality check is important, right? If, my fighter's coming off a 7-year loss or 7-year layoff, I'm not going to put him in a big fight in a promotion like Brave to just, go there and fight. There has to be something. There has to be some warm up matches. There have to be something. So as a fighter also, I think it's important that we have a reality check. As coaches, as fighters, we need to have a reality check because at the end of the day, what you need to understand and what I keep saying is you can blame poor matchmaking, you can blame situations. I've heard stories where I've been told that, oh, these fighters went across the border and they were treated like this and, this and that. You signed the dotted line, right? Nobody put a gun to your head and said, sign this fight. You signed the dotted line and then you accept what is there. But before you sign the dotted line, I feel there are certain checks that need to be made, not only as a fighter, as, even when I'm approving a fight for one of any of my fighters, I have to do certain checks as a coach and say, okay, whether this fight makes sense or doesn't make sense, or maybe not right now. Let's give it another 1 or 2 fights before we take this fight. Sometimes, yeah, I mean, you trust your student's ability and it doesn't pan out. But sometimes I feel, it's also about it's see, the whole thing is that I feel that, it's also being sold too hard that Pakistan versus India, it's a war, it's this and that. So now you have people like, obviously, when you have people going over from India to Pakistan, again, the pressures on them to perform. And, and at times we get a little too carried away trying to become an ambassador of the sport and trying to carry message of the nation. And no, you're not. You're two people who are in a fist fight. Just accept that. You're not an ambassador of the sport. You're not an ambassador of the country. You're not. You're an athlete to compete. I have seen, I mean, I don't want to take names, but people get so caught up in that whole hype and the media and, you know, the fight becomes secondary or to the other end that there's so much trash talking. And I mean, it just takes a focus off the fight. I mean, I don't know what that does to the mentality of the fighter, but that can't be easy, right? I mean, you're one, you're going into hostile territory. Two, you're carrying you are building it up to a point where you are saying that I am the face of Indian MMA. So you're putting that extra load on yourself. And then you're getting sucked into this whole media and social media. And, I don't know how much distracting that is. I mean, I would not allow a single fighter of mine to do that. I mean, I think, again, I might be completely wrong. And that's what the promotion needs or whatever, but it's a fight. At the end of the day, you get your hand raised, everything you've said becomes true. You don't, and everything you said is a joke. So, you have to be careful. I mean, credit where it's due. I mean, the results are what they are. We can't say that, okay, you know, that the poor matchmaking. I mean, I think, yeah, there could have been better matchmaking. You know, I mean, I would love to see an Angad Bish. I would love to see somebody at the level of Anshul Jubli's. I would love to see, there are so many more guys that I can think of, them, and then we can talk. Why aren't these guys being called over for a fight? Like, I mean, these guys are doing well. It's not like they aren't. They are doing well. Why not call them over to fight? You know. So, I mean, the question is also one, yes, definitely matchmaking, because it's I guess it's the same thing, right? If I have to do it in India and invite a team over, you think I'm going to invite your A team? It's just that, isn't it? I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it is what it. But at the same time, as a fighter or as a coach, if I've approved my fighter to fight and I've signed the dotted line, I think the cribbing has to stop. That, oh, this happened and that happened, and they took up so many of our hours signing autographs, and they took us for this. I mean, that's just crazy. You lost.
Yeah.
Period. Accept it. Move on.
I mean, I I dream of seeing like Ismail Khan, the volcano from Pakistan, taking on Angad Bish. That's a fight that was supposed to happen a while back for Matrix Fight Night, I believe, as well. At least that was rumored. Didn't materialize. Now that would be a fun fight. Anshul Jubli, potentially there's a Shazay Prince fight there. There's a Rizwan Ali who's been calling him out for ages. That fight's potentially there. But then again, to get to Anshul Jubli, now you have to go through that whole system of getting into the UFC, which is again
Yeah.
an uphill battle.
Again,
So
yeah.
I mean,
You know, get
it's
there
hard to
and fight
compare.
him, and then you will know.
Yeah,
That's the thing. That's the thing. He's done his hard work. He's reached there. Anybody calling him out, get there. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to fight you. And also I believe that when you look at some of the other when you look at even talking about I think the fight that I would have really wanted to see for the MFN title belt was Olomi versus Chongre. That would have been a great fight to watch. I mean, I've known Ulomi for years, and I know the talent he is, and seeing Chongreng obviously grow, that would have been a great fight. Now, those are the fights we should be talking about.
yes. And hopefully those are ones that can materialize. Again, this is Brave CF matchmaking. This is Karate Combat matchmaking. These are promotions at a high level. And again, before anybody makes this political, like the Brave CF president is Indian by descent. The Karate Combat president is Pakistani by descent. None of them really live in those countries anymore. But if you talk about lineage as well, again, it's like it's split across the board. But again, these things don't matter.
Listen,
Ultimately,
at
it's
the
just
end of the day,
it's a fist fight.
you
It's a
know,
fist fight and it's money.
yeah,
Yeah, it's marketing. And
I'm
and I
sure for both of them it doesn't matter as
no, it
long
does.
as this you
But
sell the
it's
tickets, man. As long as you sell the tickets, I mean, I'm sure they are not thinking of
yeah,
they are not thinking from that perspective at all. I
at
mean,
all.
that's what I want to believe.
And no, I think this is great business. I think this is exactly how promotion should be thinking. Why? Because it gives the Indian guys a chance to shine at a very high viewed fight, and it gives the Pakistani guys a chance to shine in a highly viewed fight. I mean, this is what box office is, right? Cricket, it's so blatantly exploits this. If you haven't noticed, I don't follow click cricket, but every time there's a Champions Trophy, every time there's a World Cup, it just so happens that we will get Pakistan India in the group stages. They cannot have any of these matches without Pakistan India meeting at least once because they know that's their highest ticket selling match, highest viewership attracting match. So if MMA is exploiting the same kind of thing, amazing. I think do 10 Pakistan versus India fights on one card for all I give a shit. I think that's great business across the board, across the border, and why not?
And it
But
gets eyeballs, it gets, it gets the word out. Well, it's
yeah,
all great. It's all great.
what else can you ask for? But again, it's like the results, in my opinion, head to head, have been alarmingly skewed in Pakistan's favor. And of course, I cannot in any way downplay the efforts of our boys here in Pakistan because again, like a lot like the boys over in India, it's like they don't have the government support. They often don't get private investment, although it's slowly increasing. But sponsorships and such are now sort of coming into play. Infrastructure wise, again, these guys are still most of them training in very small gyms, very dingy environments. Again, that's just the life of a fighter. But it speaks volumes to how well the Pakistani boys have been doing across the board. But if I was to ask you, and I know you have a very positive outlook to things, your first answer kind of showed me that. But if I was to ask you, what is the problem in Indian MMA right now? Like, if you could point out, and when I say problem, I don't mean like what is the existential threat. I mean like what is something that might be hindering Indian MMA going from like maybe a 70 to a 90? Like, and when I say problem, I also don't mean like a standing hindrance. Like, what are the things that this community needs to overcome? Because there's like 1,000 I can talk about for Pakistan, and I often do on this podcast. But since we want to get the Indian perspective, what would be those things that you think incrementally you guys need to do in order for this whole community, its fighters, its coaches, its managers, the entire ecosystem to get to the next level?
I think better competition. Those two words, that's all. It's not a problem, but I think we need better competitions. And this stems right from the amateur circuit. When you have a bunch of amateurs that have fought internationally, right, have gone through international competition. Like I know again might sound like, oh, I'm because I'm FMMA pessimist. I think it starts from amateur level. It doesn't start at the pro level. It never starts at the pro. For me, an amateur career is very, very important because of this way. Right? When you go to a world championship and you fight people from 10 different nationalities, right? You fought people from Kazakhstan, you fought people from Indonesia, you fought people from USA, and all these countries. When you go to the big stage, it doesn't you know it doesn't rack you, or the fact that, oh, now suddenly I'm fighting Kazakh, and oh, this, that, and we've seen that happen to our guys. I mean, I'm sure you can say that as well. It's just the mentality. When we go up against a white man, or we go up against, suddenly you have a Brazilian or somebody like that. Yeah. And then you're suddenly, like, oh, obviously these guys are better. But when you fought them from amateur level, that fear is gone. You can handle that pressure. You've been there, you've done that. And I think that is most important. We and secondly, I think from a very I know it sounds very wrong of me to say that, but we need to pick and choose our heroes wisely. We have people who we, uphold as, oh, these are the great fighters of India. And, when you look at their records, the only people they've ever managed to beat are people with lesser records. Every time they go up with people like that have similar records, they've performed badly, you know. But they'll keep building a good padded record against people with lesser records. And, and we glorify that. But, and that's what I keep saying, people I've had people who I've heard people say things like absolute insane things like, oh, what's the point of wasting money on an amateur career and going to world championships? No, you idiot, that is required. That is absolutely what is needed in this country today. You need people with solid amateur backgrounds who fought internationally in their amateur career, who have seen it, done it before they enter a pro career. So that whole, firstly, I think, and I've always believed, I'm sure you or anyone who's ever stepped into the cage, or Matt would agree, is that it's 80% mental. Right? Even if you don't believe yourself 1%, that fight is almost lost. Which is what happens when most of our boys fight foreigners, right? So when you've done that in your amateur career, that's not even a thought that crosses your mind in your pro career. Right?
You
Because
start focusing on the things
yeah,
that actually matter,
actually
like the
matter.
skills. Yeah.
Skill level, and stuff like recovering and weight cuts and stuff like that. And you're trying to get over that fear of, oh, if this guy's like a Kazakh or a Dagestani, oh, obviously he's going to out wrestle me because they're just 42. No, I mean, it's MMA, right? And I'm sure, I mean, we've had amateurs that have gone and beaten Kazakhs. We've got amateurs who, performed very well against other countries. So I think an amateur career is what we require. We need people with really good competition, records at amateur careers before they actually turn pro. And I think that should be organically the next phase of Indian MMA.
Got it.
Like,
And I mean, I follow the beautiful boys over at Locker Room India. They do such a splendid job of like covering the local scene, in my opinion. Most of the information, or most of the highlights, or most of what's happening, I get through Ranjit and the rest of the team over at Locker Room. So shout out to them, and they do an incredible job. If you guys want to follow anything related to Indian MMA, check Locker Room India on Instagram. They're absolutely brilliant. I see a lot of activity in terms of like, they're posting highlights, and they have a very nice team, a very nice
yeah,
machine down when it comes to like the go to an event. They get the highlights, chop it up, put it up. They're constantly generating content. Like I look at Locker Room and I'm like, that's what I want on the mic to be in a couple of years when we have that kind of capital. But uh, is it true, like, or is it just optics kind of deceiving me? Like, is Indian MMA active? Are there events frequently happening? If I'm like a professional fighter, maybe I'm like 3-0, 4-0, or like 5-1 or whatever, am I getting opportunities locally on, because that for me is the biggest problem, amateur or pro. Like, the biggest problem that I see is that there is no frequency of events, there's no regularity of events. There'll be one event, there'll be 10 fights on the card, 20 fighters get to fight, and then they have no idea if they're going to get an opportunity to fight after that or not. Is it the same in Indian MMA, or is it,
so
would you
I'll
say,
give you
better?
some numbers. Last year, 2024, as FMMAI, we sanctioned about 18 events. Right? This year, this weekend will be it's what, March 2nd. This weekend will be our fourth event. And we are on track to do about 20 plus events this year alone. So I don't think there's a dearth. I think, what people need to realize is that, if obviously you're not looking at big purses right now, but I don't think you should be looking at big purses right now. The big purses will come when you manage to get to those road to UFC and the PFLs and Bellator. But the question is, are you ready for it there? Right now, in this point of their career, I think they should be fighting. Even if you're a pro fighter, you should be doing 4 fights a year. And today I can say that because I have numbers to back me. You can go to my profile and I'm sure you can see that. You can go to the FMMA Instagram and you can see that 20 events in the year. I mean,
That's
that's not
amazing.
even a joke. Yeah, that's not
Yeah.
even a joke. Like, believe me, as I can proudly say that, forget fighters, my officials, referees, and judges are probably the most active in Asia. They are
I
they are
love that.
refereeing and judging 20 events in a year. I mean, that's insane. Who could have thought about this 5 years back? Right? And so opportunities are there. Again, reality check. Oh, I've had fighters telling me, "Oh, I don't fight for less than $1,000." Where have you fought, my brother, for you us to pay you $1,000?
Yeah.
Like, I would really love to see where have you fought, which is worth $1,000. But I think, they're getting it wrong from the perspective that this is not where the money is. And like any business, like any career, this is where your investment is. Once you get to those 6 or 7 or 8 fights and you get recognized, that's when the post will come in. And like, I mean, shout out to one of my guys, Fahad, who just got signed up by Brave.
Yes.
He's had a six
Congrats
and
on
one
that.
record, right?
Yeah.
And he is one of the guys who, came to me when he was 19. He's 22 now. 2019, 20 when he came. And I told him, listen, if you're going to come here, you need to just fight when I ask you to fight. You don't ask me what the money is because then I won't have an answer for you. And he's done that. He's paved his way all the way to Brave now. And big things to follow, or I'm sure. So I think, he's a good example of just put your head down and do the groundwork. And something big will happen. Now when he gets his $2,000 or plus and all that, he's done his initial groundwork, right? He's done those 7 fights for as low as 5,000 rupees. I mean, which is covered his maybe travel or something like that. But
Yeah, barely.
he's done the groundwork. I mean, it's very easy for someone to turn around and say, oh, it's easy for you guys to say that. It's tough. It's tough. Any career is tough. But every career, I mean, when you have a startup, you have an investment, right? You have to make some investments, and these are their investments. So I think there is no dearth of competition now in India. But again, I think, when one is, like I said, better competition. I keep saying it and I'll keep saying it all the time, better competition. When you ask me the next big thing, I think the next big thing in India is not even in the works at the moment. He's somewhere fighting amateur, and that's how it should be. I believe you need to have a solid amateur career, especially if you fought internationally and stuff like that, before you step into a pro career and stuff like that. And, especially if you dream of a UFC or a Brave or something like that.
Got it. And I think so. Last question, then we'll wrap it up because again, we like keeping this at 40 minutes, or else this Gen Z completely brain rotted generation looks at like 1 hour and they're like, "What? We can't watch this." But for some reason, the statistics say people click on your video more if it's 40 minutes. I don't know. But anyways, I wanted to ask you about Matrix Fight Night. Is this the great white hope, so to speak? Is this like the thing that Indian MMA fans, because when I look at it, again from an outsider perspective, and I have a complete outsider perspective. Like I try to follow Indian MMA, but I'm not there on the ground. There's so much happening in Pakistani MMA. That's where most of my focus goes. So educate me. Like when you look at Matrix Fight Night, what do you think of? What do you see? Do you see opportunity? Do you see meritocratic opportunity? Do you see like an equal playing field? Is that the professional fighters filtering process to decide who the best guys are? Is that because I know that's where Shrikant kind of came out from? I know, I think Bharat Kandari even fought there, like you said. Chongreng was fighting there. So when you look at Matrix Fight Night, what would you say about them? Are they doing something right? Are they playing their cards right? Because again, everything's at a comparative. I will not compare Flogger series in Rawalpindi to Matrix Fight Night because Flogger series in Rawalpindi is from one gym, inside one gym. It's very low capital investment, very low cost, very simple. Just get your guys here. We'll do some fights. We'll record it. We'll put it up on Topology. Have a nice day. No glitz, no glamour. But now we're talking about, the Shroff family, and they have so much money, and there's Disney Hotstar, and they're doing shows in Dubai. Is Matrix Fight Night doing things right?
So, I'll reserve my personal opinion, but if I talk from an Indian MMA scene, I think it's doing us better than it's doing us any harm. Obviously, there is always going to be, stories you hear of some people being cited and obviously something like that. But let's be really honest, Anshul Jubli started his career from there. Today, he signed up with UFC. You have, Angad Bisht, who was there and has fought to UFC. I believe Arshia Menon is now in TUF, was fighting in NFL. So obviously, they are doing some things right. I think it's always going to be, you have to take you have to always take some things with a pinch of salt. You know, I'm sure that, I mean, come on, when we talk about UFC, you will have at least a bunch of fighters who will claim the fact that UFC ruined their career, that, UFC did this and UFC did that. All this while people were like going, oh, PFL, Bellator, and now you suddenly you have your pit bulls who are criticizing them. So I think any event, okay, this is how I put it. I'm not one for glitz and glamour in Bollywood anyway, so I'm not the right person to answer that question, whether that's doing good or bad. But I think in India, it's that you need to. It's a very famous Bhagat Singh saying, like, if you want to wake up people from sleep, it needs a blast, and that's what they did, right? That's what they did. I mean, the glitz and the glamour helped. Obviously, suddenly, people are talking about MMA, and even if today you go to a kickboxing gym, you're like, oh, I'm doing MMA. Everyone's doing MMA now, which is good. I mean, there's not no harm in saying that. It only puts good things. Regarding talent, I'm not really sure whether they are, getting the best. I still feel that there are a lot of other guys who might have been getting lost somewhere. They've had their own share of things, which we all obviously read, and it has all been public and stuff like that. But yeah, I think, yeah, better to have them than not. Why not? I think, yeah, at the end of the day, we can keep cribbing about it, but they're putting their money where their mouth is, and not many. I don't see many people doing that, right? I don't see many people doing that. So before we criticize them, I would love to see some of the people come out and put their money, put up a show at that level, and then we can talk about, whether they are doing good or bad for the Indian MMA scene. Because, when did we ever imagine that there'll be an Indian MMA event that is held in Dubai? Right? I mean, all this while, the only thing we ever thought of that will come out of Middle East will be Brave and, stuff like that. I'm not saying that they are at that level in terms of quality or anything, but they are doing it, right? So they're putting their money where their mouth is. I mean, like I always say, we can cry about it, but we are not going anywhere with that. You know, there are always going to be people who will feel cheated. There are always going to be people who will be thankful. I personally have had a couple of guys fight there, and I think it's all good, man. It's all good. Those guys are getting paid. They're getting food on their table. I mean, they're getting a good level fight now. You know, they at least with all the hype today, when you fight MFN, suddenly you're a recognized face, not only in India, in Asia. So it's all good, man. It's all good. I think we need more shows like MFN.
Lovely. And I think this is MFN Fight Week right now. So I think that's going to be fun.
Yeah, we
If
have
I'm
one of
not
our
wrong.
guys on the card fighting in 2 days. So yeah, looking forward to it, man.
Let's go. I'll be
Yeah.
watching it too. Hopefully, I'll find a way. I remember last time we had to watch the Illumi fight. I was asking for your credit card details so that I can get Disney Hotstar. It's horrible down here, man. Don't even get me started. But thanks for that. I appreciate it. And you were nice enough to actually send it over. So I really appreciate it, Jitendra. But damn. Okay, best of luck to you guys there. And again, congratulations on the Brave CF signing. Of course, they're absolutely massive, but I expect nothing else, man. You're the GOAT. And I really appreciate you coming on for this. And like I said, bit of an introductory episode, more educational for me and obviously the people watching. And as we get going, as we keep moving, I'd love to keep having you on. Whenever there's a fight coming up or where something's happened here and there, let's just love to get your opinion because like this episode has proven, you have a very balanced and very like reasonable approach to MMA, which is very important. I'm all for the shit talk and but then again, we have to keep things real here. So again, Jitendra, thank you so much for the time. I can't explain how much that means to me. Thank you so much, my friend, for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. I mean, it's always good talking to you. And
Likewise.
yeah, I mean, it was great once again. And I hope nothing that I said gets you in trouble.
Oh no, no, not at all. Don't worry about that. I'm already in enough trouble. There's no digging myself out of that hole, so it's perfectly fine. And again, Jitendra, thank you so much. We will definitely be having you on again at some point. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for watching, and thank you all so much, of course, for supporting on the mic the way that you do. Please do leave a like, a share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Leave a comment. Let me know what you guys want to see next. Let me know what you guys want to see from the way in. And we're gonna keep talking more Indian MMA as well because we think it's very important to kind of connect that divide and see where both ecosystems are and how they're going to be traveling through and through. Let us know which Pakistani fighters you want on the podcast next. Let me know which Indian fighters you might want to get on the podcast next, and we'll get that done. From me, from Jitendra, from Pakistan, from India, to all of you, I just want to say thank you all so much. Have a nice day. Keep supporting MMA. Keep watching the beautiful sport. And until I speak to you next time, keep it tight. I'll see you then.